Watch right now on the Front News Project. The Ukrainian armed forces are taking back Crimea. The special operation Web is also awaiting the temporarily occupied peninsula. The Kerch Bridge has been shaken once again. The war is entering a nuclear phase. Could Putin launch a nuclear strike on one of the Ukrainian cities? And also reports from Sumy and the Dnipropetrovsk region, straight from the heart of the war. Watch fiery, intense and blazing footage from the front lines right now. The bloody war continues. A war that Vladimir Putin and his gang unleashed on Ukrainian soil. The heroic resistance of the Ukrainian armed forces and the entire Ukrainian people in their fight for freedom continues. Greetings. This is Front News. I'm Vladimir Timoshenko. Over the next 30 minutes, you'll get the truth about the war, uncovered by our journalists from the hottest combat zones. So, are you ready? Then let's begin. And we're starting right away with exclusive material. The security service of Ukraine has blown up the supports of the Kerch Bridge. Their agents planted explosives on those very supports and around 5 in the morning activated the first explosive device. The underwater supports of the pillars have been severely damaged at the seabed level. 1,100 kilograms of explosives in TNT equivalent contributed to this. In fact, the bridge is in an emergency condition, the agency stated. Could Crimea be facing its own web? Exclusive details about what is happening in Crimea right now coming up in just a minute. But there is also troubling news from the front. Russian forces have advanced toward the Sumy region, occupying Konstantinovka. Other settlements are also under threat. All the details are in our report. Crimea was shaken by a series of explosions. The security service of Ukraine has struck the Crimean bridge for the third time. This time, special agents planted explosives on the bridge supports. The special operation was carried out underwater. As a result, the occupiers restricted traffic for several hours. The Ministry of Defense reported that 8 drones were destroyed overnight over Russian regions and temporarily annexed Crimea. Is Operation Web 2 really brewing in Crimea? At the very least, preparations for it are underway there. After the explosions at Russian airfields, planes and helicopters were massively scrambled from military airfields in Crimea. According to Ukrainian intelligence, the carriers of tactical nuclear weapons in Crimea could be Russian planes, helicopters, as well as submarines, ships and boats based there.
At present, there has been no recorded deployment of the occupier country's nuclear weapons on the territory of occupied Crimea. However, it should be noted that even without nuclear potential, the territory of Crimea is essentially considered a continuous military base for the occupier country's army. Therefore, there are enough legitimate military targets to carry out operations of this nature.
Let us recall that on June 1, the security service of Ukraine conducted a historic special operation in Russia. Simultaneously, 4 military airfields in the rear of the aggressor country were struck, resulting in the loss of dozens of aircraft worth $7 billion. Meanwhile, Russia has published the so-called peace memorandum, which it handed over to Ukraine during the negotiations in Istanbul. It includes 3 sections with 2 options for ceasefire conditions and 31 points. The first option for a ceasefire is the complete withdrawal of the Ukrainian army from Russian territory, as well as from the entire territory of the Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia regions.
This refers to territorial concessions by Ukraine. Moreover, the Russian Federation is claiming even those areas of the Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson regions that are under the control of Ukraine's defense forces and which the Russian army is unable to control, meaning they cannot break through the defenses of Ukraine's forces. The Russian political leadership is clearly well aware that from a military standpoint, the objectives of occupying the territory of Donetsk region are unattainable.
The second option includes provisions prohibiting the redeployment of troops, halting mobilization and the supply of foreign military aid to Kyiv, as well as initiating demobilization.
Halting mobilization activities would effectively disrupt both the rotation of personnel and the replenishment of operational reserves for Ukraine's defense forces. The same situation applies to the cessation of military and military technical support from our strategic partners. That is, the Russian Federation fully understands that the ability to resume the logistical component of military technical support, if it is halted, could seriously impact the current situation directly on the front line.
In addition, the document stipulates Ukraine's neutrality, its refusal to join NATO, the holding of elections, international recognition of the Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia regions, as well as Crimea as Russian and other such nonsense.
The remaining points of the so-called memorandum from the Russian delegation on the demilitarization of Ukraine indicate that the proposals from the Ukrainian side are essentially being disregarded. Let me remind you, in the Ukrainian memorandum, the issues of demilitarization or reducing the size of the armed forces of Ukraine are specifically excluded from the negotiation process. A similar situation applies accordingly to the so-called neutral status of Ukraine.
Meanwhile, the situation in the north of the Sumy region continues to worsen. The analytical project Deep State has reported that Russian occupation forces have captured Konstantinovka. Several other settlements are also under threat.
At the moment, the main threat of further advancement by Russian troops in the Sumy region is their potential to establish direct control over the settlement of Yeno-Kiyivka. This settlement is the largest logistics hub for the armed forces of Ukraine. The Sumy-Yeno-Kiyivka-Suja highway, which is used for personnel rotation, delivery of ammunition, and evacuation of the wounded, including by units of the Ukrainian Defense Forces concentrated in the Kursk and Belgorod regions, passes through this area.
Meanwhile, official Washington is warning that after Operation Web, Russia may launch new strikes against Ukraine's energy system. And now let's analyze the situation on the much-suffering Pokrovsk front. Let's be honest, this is yet another sacred target for Putin and his gang. Accordingly, the situation here is also extremely tense. Since the beginning of the day on the Pokrovsk front, the occupiers have made 42 attempts to dislodge our defenders from their positions in the areas of the settlements of Poltavka, Mirolyubivka, Malinivka, Yelizavetivka, Lisivka, Zvereve, Udachne, Kotlin, Novozergeyevka, Novoaleksandrivka, and towards Pokrovsk and Andrivka. The defense forces are holding back the pressure and have already repelled 38 enemy attacks. 3 kilometers from the front line, 4 villages have been almost completely evacuated and destroyed. This refers to the Mezhova community in the Dnipropetrovsk region on the border with Donetsk region. It has been loud here since the very beginning of the full-scale invasion. Now, explosions are heard continuously, which is why a mandatory evacuation of families with children was recently announced from 5 settlements and from Mezhova itself. At the same time, the number of local residents is only increasing. Why is that? TSN journalist Anastasia Neverna will tell and show us.
Mezhova greets us with the sound of a siren, signaling yet another air raid alert. And the siren here hardly ever stops. The front line is just a few kilometers away. The sound of shelling is constant. And recently, another problem has emerged. FPV drones have started breaking through to the center of the community. Dozens of them fly over the houses every day. Just the other day, one of the drones destroyed a kindergarten. After the strike, only the walls remained of the recently renovated facility. Everything burned. Children's beds, books, toys.
There were no children present at the time of the strike. Classes are being held online, so we had no casualties or injuries. Cultural institutions, educational facilities have been destroyed. Objects in the social and cultural sphere are being targeted and destroyed. We've managed to restore some of them, but it's becoming more and more difficult. In some cases, it's simply dangerous to do so.
Locals have learned to move quickly through the streets, to listen carefully, and more recently, to watch the sky intently. I have a ringing in my ears.
My cheek twitches, it twitches. My cheek twitches, it's just nerves now. You can hear it both day and night. Novopavlivka is nearby, so of course we can hear everything here. We understand that we're next in line. We know that we're next.
It is precisely from neighboring Novopavlivka, which the enemy has been wiping out with daily cab strikes since last year, that a significant number of displaced people have come to Mezhova. There are about 10 kilometers between the villages, but even that distance is seen by people as relative safety.
No one really wants to go far from home.
Anastasia is one of those who stayed in Novopavlivka until the enemy destroyed her house. I don't know how many people are left there.
I don't know how many people are left there. On my street where I live, 3 homeowners have already been killed. There's no one left further down. There are only empty houses standing there.
Now, at 74 years old, she has become a displaced person. She came to process her documents, and her biggest fear is that she'll have to move even further away again. She just started to settle in here.
That's exactly what we're afraid of, because when we first arrived, everything was fine, but now they're shooting again, everything's exploding. I'm scared again, I'm shaking.
At the Administrative Services Center, they say that despite the proximity to the front line, there are already more than 6,000 displaced people in the community. Azarov also started.
Now FPV drones have also started reaching us, but people are still moving here, and even today we had citizens from the Novopavlivka community.
Margarita has been living in Mezhova since the summer of 2022. The whole family fled from Vuledar, and now they're once again living out of suitcases. Together with her husband and paralyzed father, they're planning to move deeper into the Dnipropetrovsk region.
What are we supposed to wait for?
What should we expect? Wait until the house is destroyed and my father has to be pulled out, for example, from a burning building. It's terrifying because they're dropping things here.
But Vera still believes that everything will be alright. Her yard can be seen from afar. It's overflowing with flowers. That is, 24 hours a day, I'm busy with the flowers.
You see, I'm always tending to the flowers. Right now, I need to braid these daffodils. Look, the roses are starting to bloom.
The woman planted a vegetable garden and grows several varieties of roses. She says she's gotten used to the constant explosions.
Something is buzzing, I can't even tell what it is anymore. Maybe it's a door opening somewhere, or maybe it's just buzzing. Well, if it's flying, let it fly. What can you do? I'm not planning to go anywhere.
Mandatory evacuation of families with children has already been carried out in 4 settlements of the Mezhivska community. Just recently, evacuation was also announced in 5 more places, including the village of Mechova itself, because every day it's getting louder and more dangerous here.
Russia's war against Ukraine is entering a nuclear phase. One possible scenario from the Kremlin is a nuclear strike on Kyiv or Odessa, counting on the West not responding in any way. These are the rather grim prospects, to put it mildly, that the Western press is predicting. As you can see, Russia's revenge for Webb and the strike on the Crimean bridge may not be limited to just Orikhiv or the recent missile and drone attack. And by the way, even now, NATO is increasing the number of air defense systems in Europe 5-fold because of the potential Russian threat. Meanwhile, servicemen of the 225th Separate Assault Regiment of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, with support from adjacent units, captured a Russian army company strongpoint on the territory of Kursk region. You are about to see this footage right now.
Just yesterday, it was an important resistance hub. No, it's nothing but a crater. The 225th Separate Assault Regiment in the Kursk region cleared and captured a Russian army company strongpoint, which covered an important direction and was well prepared for all-around defense. After Ukraine's successful strikes on Russian aviation and the Crimean bridge, Russia didn't just react, it became enraged. For example, Medvedev is now talking about some kind of retribution.
To everyone who is worried and waiting for retribution, it's normal to worry. That's a natural human trait. Retribution is inevitable.
The possibility of a retaliatory response was also mentioned in the US, suggesting that Russia might strike Ukraine using ballistic missiles, including the Oreshnik.
I'm sure that such a situation is possible because this person has a disturbed mind. Actually, yes. But I can say with confidence that, first of all, we will know in advance whether this Oreshnik will be launched or not. Because, thank God, our partners, the British and the American, monitoring the entire territory of Russia around the clock with their satellites. We receive timely information about any missile launches that take place from the territory of the Russian Federation.
Although there is also the possibility that Russia will simply launch another swarm of drones at energy or civilian infrastructure, there is also the possibility of new waves of medium-range ballistic missile launches.
I think they will continue to use drones just as they have been. Why do they mostly use drones? Because their goal at the moment is to bleed our air defense system dry. Well, that's what they believe.
The Daily Mail also quotes a British colonel who claims that the war could enter a nuclear phase. After all, Putin knows that nuclear retaliation would force Ukraine to surrender.
He is not the only politician in the Russian Federation who I think would advise him that it's really not worth messing around with nuclear weapons, because the response would be severe and harsh, believe me. Neither Europe nor America will just stand by and watch. And in return, they would receive a very serious blow.
But who knows, maybe after Operation Web and the Crimean bridge, something else awaits Russia.
Good things come in threes. First there was Web, then the Crimean bridge. I can tell you with great confidence that we have one ace up our sleeve. We have our own little rocket that's more interesting than Oreshnik. I think we'll be testing it ourselves very soon. Given the situation that's unfolding on the part of the Russian Federation.
And despite the fact that since the beginning of this year, Russia has lost approximately 200,000 soldiers, Europe has also begun actively preparing for the arrival of the Russian world. The UK has announced a state of readiness for war.
This is something that concerns us. I can announce that we are planning to build at least 6 new ammunition factories in the UK. In this way, we will create more than 1,000 jobs. We will produce 1,000 new long-range guns in the UK to strengthen Europe's deterrence forces.
NATO has also called on its European members to increase the number of air defense systems 5-fold due to the threat of Russian aggression. But will Russia have the courage to take such a step?
I think they won't have enough strength and resources to do it. I understand that Europe realizes this as well. I understand that as of today, by the way, when Putin announced this renewed mobilization and these large-scale exercises on the territory of Belarus, actually after that, Europe began to take Putin's threats much more seriously. And preparations are underway on the territory of the European Union in Europe, with very serious measures being taken for defensive and preventive actions.
Also, according to updated information from Deep State, the occupiers have advanced in the Sumy region, capturing Andriivka and Vodolagi.
Well then, now we're moving to the Kupiansk and Lyman sectors of the front. The situation here, as usual, is extremely tense. The defense forces successfully repelled 2 enemy attacks advancing on the Kupiansk axis in the areas of the settlements of Zapadnya and Petropavlivka. On the Lyman axis, the enemy attacked 12 times in the areas of the settlements of Khekivka, Novy Mir, Redkodub, Karpivka, Zelena Dolina, Torske, and towards Hihorivka. At present, fighting continues in 3 locations, and it was also a hellish week for the Ukrainian city of Sumy and the Sumy region as a whole. For example, on the morning of June 3, the Russians treacherously struck Sumy with a multiple rocket launcher system, hitting the city center and deliberately targeting civilian infrastructure. 4 people were killed and more than 20 were wounded. At the same time, 2 men died on the spot. All the details of this horror will be shown by TSN journalist Oksana Solodovnik.
5 strikes hit different neighborhoods of Sumy. For the second day in a row, the Russians have been attacking the city with long-range rocket artillery, using cluster munitions to hit streets, businesses, hospitals, and homes. The explosions lasted for several seconds. One shell hit a street where, at the moment of impact, there were a lot of people and many cars had just stopped at a red light at the intersection. After the explosion, 2 cars caught fire and burned to the ground. A man died at the site of the strike. We were very scared. We were standing near the store.
We were really frightened. We stood near the store. A second, then the explosion. We dropped to the ground, then another explosion. A piece of shrapnel fell on me, and sand rained down. I didn't count how many explosions there were, because people who had been injured in the area, people who were just passing by, started running in. There was a mother with a small child. Her arm was wounded. Blood was literally gushing from the child. They pressed some kind of napkin here, trying to stop it. It was really terrifying. There were so many people.
Another shell killed a man in his own garden. As a result, a woman died in the hospital from multiple injuries. Then another man. His 7-year-old daughter was seriously wounded and is currently in the hospital. In total, 25 civilians sustained shrapnel wounds. Among the injured are 4 children aged 3 to 17, 3 of whom are in intensive care. Doctors are also fighting for the lives of 3 adults. About 15 civilian buildings were damaged, an apartment building, private houses and a hospital.
Preliminarily, 7 locations have been identified where various types of destruction occurred. A command center has been set up. 15 houses have been damaged, including the hospital. The 4th hospital has sustained damage. Electricity and gas are both available. We are currently restoring power to the roads. I think we are already cleaning everything up. We will restore traffic on Shevchenko Avenue today.
In total, 5 strikes were recorded in 3 districts of the city. Another munition presumably exploded in the air. Its fragments pierced the ceiling of an apartment on the 9th floor and got stuck in the sofa of one of the apartments. The homeowner survived only because he had gone to the store half an hour before the attack.
Right into the sofa, right where I was lying. Well, I just took the sofa out. Sorry. Here, I find them under the sofa. These are just the remains. They've already taken a lot of things.
For some time after the attack, people were not allowed into the building while the explosives experts were defusing the munition. The city is observing 2 days of mourning for those killed in the Russian terrorist attack.
And now, let's analyze the situation on the Kramatorsk and Toretsk fronts in detail. The Russian world continues to destroy, kill, and maim here as well. On the Kramatorsk front today, there were 2 combat clashes in the areas of Chasiv Yar and Kurdyumivka. The defense forces have already successfully repelled 1 assault by the invaders. Another one is still ongoing. On the Toretsk front, the enemy attacked in the areas of the settlements of Delivka, Toretsk, Nelipivka, Sherbinivka, and in the direction of the settlements of Alexandro Kalinove, Yablonivka, and Ruski Yar. The aggressors also made 13 attempts to improve their tactical position. 2 combat clashes are still ongoing. And of course, today we simply could not help but remind you of another chapter of this war, one that will definitely help Ukraine ultimately defeat the Russian war criminals. The Security Service of Ukraine carried out one of the largest covert operations of the war, attacking Russian airfields with kamikaze drones as part of a special operation codenamed Web. According to a representative of Ukrainian intelligence who wished to remain anonymous, the operation was made possible thanks to a unique scheme for delivering drones into enemy territory. This Web operation shocked Putin and all his military commanders. We have prepared all the details especially for you.
An unprecedented operation by the Security Service of Ukraine under the leadership of Vasil Malyuk deep in the Russian rear.
4 long-range aviation airfields have been attacked in the last 2 hours.
This is how the historic Bailey airfield looks now, strategic enemy aviation.
During the special operation called Web, Ukrainian special services carried out massive FPV drone strikes simultaneously on 4 Russian military airfields, Bili, Dyagilivo, Olenya and Ivanovo. According to preliminary reports, more than 40 military aircraft were damaged in the operation, including strategic bombers such as the Tu-95 and Tu-22 M3. At the Ivanovo airfield, an A-50 long-range radar detection aircraft was hit by drones. Russia has literally only a handful of such aircraft. The price of this rare bird is over $300 million.
There's another bang over there.
Oh, look, a new explosion.
Yet another entirely new one, once again.
Are there still drones coming before us?
A fresh drone just arrived.
Look again.
That's all here.
They're blowing everything up. Mom!
More drones.
Oh.
No, they're new ones.
Lesha, are we going to get killed?
According to preliminary data from the Ukrainian Security Service, in just a few hours, cheap FPV drones destroyed Russian aircraft worth about $7 billion.
In terms of economic efficiency, Ukraine's sabotage operation on June 1, 2025 has few equals. A single FPV drone used by Ukraine can cost as little as $300 to $600. By comparison, a modernized Russian strategic bomber Tu-95 MS is valued at $100 million or more. That's a cost cap of more than 100,000 times.
Siberia, Ryazan, Murmansk region. FPV drone strikes thousands of kilometers from the front line became possible thanks to a kind of Ukrainian Trojan horse Russian trucks carrying dozens of Ukrainian drones on board.
There it is. The copter is taking off again. Where it's taking off from, no one can tell. There it is, the trailer. Whoa, out of nowhere, whoa. Can you believe it? Damn, look how far technology has come. We're working behind the wheel there. He's controlling it with the copter and the truck. Oh! Whoa! And that's the cops knocking it down. Can you imagine?
Drones take off from a Kamaz truck right at the gas station from the truck. The Pansi is shooting them down.
At the same time, after a successful operation, local residents report that the trucks carrying the FPV drones burned to the ground after the mission.
We went fishing. I'm telling you.
In Z channels and Russian propaganda media, it's a day of mourning. Some, out of anger and shame, are once again threatening a nuclear strike. Others sadly note, the first day of summer has become a black day, not only for Russian aviation, but for the entire reputation of the Russian Federation.
Apparently, the losses to Russian strategic aviation are significant. Such a large-scale attack on components of the strategic nuclear arsenal, according to Russia's nuclear doctrine, could be grounds for the use of Russian nuclear weapons. What happened today is in fact a repeat of Pearl Harbor for the United States combined with September 11. I'm sure that a wise politician will simply play dumb in response and drink some Ecovac kefir. We endure.
It is already clear that this brilliant operation by the Security Service of Ukraine will go down in world history.
But now let's move to the Julipo and Orif sectors of the front. The bloody rampage of the enemy army continues here as well. In the Julipo direction, the aggressors made 5 unsuccessful attempts to break through our defenders' lines near Malinivka. Enemy aircraft also carried out airstrikes on the areas of Malinivka itself, Poltavka, Olivske, and Julipo. In the Orif sector, near Stepove, Malisherbaki, and towards Novandrivka, the invaders launched 4 futile attacks on our defenders' positions. Novandrivka and Kamyanske also came under attack from unguided aerial rockets. The F-16 and Mirage fighter jets, which are in service with Ukraine, are being integrated into NATO's unified digital system. This will make it possible to exchange information between aircraft and air defense systems, as well as other elements of defense. And in addition, Kyiv has received the last of the promised fighter jets from the Netherlands. Belgium, in turn, promises to deliver its batch of these aircraft to Ukraine. Will Ukraine actually be able to secure its skies with the help of the F-16? Our colleague Ihor Bondarenko looked into this question.
The last F-16 fighter jet takes off from the Volkel airbase. As of today, the Royal Netherlands Air Force has fully transitioned to the modern F-35s. The decommissioned aircraft won't be left to rust, they will help Ukrainians strike the Russians.
We are saying goodbye to the F-16, and I couldn't think of a better destination for them than Ukraine. Because of the daily Russian airstrikes, the F-16s are absolutely vital for Ukraine and for us as well. They will make it possible to contain Russian aggression. The skies over Ukraine remain Ukrainian.
Last year, in August, the first American fighter jets went on combat duty in Ukraine. Manufactured in the late 80s, modernized in the 2000s, the transferred F-16s turned out to be older than the pilots flying them. Nevertheless, these American aircraft became the flagship among the outdated fleet of Soviet planes in the Ukrainian Air Force.
I am an F-16 fighter pilot. I retrained as part of the first group.
For almost a year, Ukrainian pilots have been gaining experience operating the combat aircraft in wartime conditions. At first, they learned to shoot down Russian cruise missiles and Shaheds with the F-16. In particular, in December 2024, a Ukrainian fighter jet, for the first time in the world, shot down 6 enemy cruise missiles in a single combat sortie. In February 2025, reports emerged about the use of Western cruise air bombs by the aircraft. Therefore, in addition to air defense functions, the F-16 also began to be used for striking ground targets. The absolute air dominance of the Russians has practically come to an end.
In some areas, we are already coming very close to each other. This never happened before. From their actions, we can see that they are starting to pull back. They're afraid to come near us. There's also a living person sitting in there who doesn't want to die.
However, Ukrainian F-16s are still unable to shoot down Russian aircraft. The outdated fighters are not capable of competing with the modern Su-35s. For this, new, more powerful radar equipment and long-range weaponry are needed. We were also given long-range missiles.
But the long-range missiles we received are also of older modifications. We did not gain the capability to fight Russian aircraft, but the Russians didn't know that, so they were forced to carefully plan every combat sortie, check the area for our planes, and thoroughly cover their strike aircraft with their own fighters. This reduced the number of cap strikes on our front lines.
Out of the F-16s transferred by Denmark and the Netherlands, Ukraine has lost at least 3 aircraft and 2 pilots have died. Given the conditions of a full-scale war with Russia, the level of losses is quite acceptable, according to experts. And the level of utilization of the transferred aircraft is at its maximum.
Ukraine is using the F-16s to their fullest, basically. That is, considering their age, their level of modernization, and their equipment, I think we are using them absolutely to their full potential.
For almost 2 years, Ukraine was breaking through the barrier against the transfer of foreign fighter jets. Foreign air defense systems, tanks, and long-range missiles went through a similar process. The lost time did not allow the Ukrainian Air Force to strike deep into Russian territory at the beginning of the full-scale invasion. Now, however, drones dominate the skies. Small drones can effectively destroy large military aircraft. This has been proven by the Security Service of Ukraine. That's all for today.
But very soon, Front News will bring you new, unique reports from our journalists in the hottest spots of the war, gathered so that you know the truth. This was Volodymyr Tymoshenko with you. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones.